Have a great show.
Register at the top right.
The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Lang. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Lang.
Welcome to Finding Certainty, everyone. Welcome back. If you're coming back, welcome here for the first time if you're a new listener. We're very pleased today to have a very special guest, Mr. Winn Claybaugh. And Winn, really appreciate you being on the show today. I know you've done a lot of these throughout your career, and it is our absolute honor to have you with us.
Yeah, I have done a lot of these, Patrick, and I'm honored, but I also have to tell you that I get nervous every single time. What do they say? That the number one fear is public speaking, and the number two fear is death by fire. So you can imagine how I feel right now.
Well, I know you've had a lot of experience, so I'm not too worried. I think this is going to go great, and appreciate you taking the time to meet with us.
My pleasure.
I'm looking forward to visiting with Winn today. He has a really an extraordinary career, what he's accomplished, what he is accomplishing, and really not just on the business side, but on his philanthropic side. I think it's probably what you're most excited about, Winn, if I know anything about you. Looking forward to getting into that story a little bit, because what you're doing is just a phenomenal example for others, in my opinion. I always start out the show by sharing two reasons why I've invited this specific guest. And one of the first is that Winn has absolutely transformed an industry, and he's done that not single-handedly, because it always takes a village, right? It takes a team, but he has definitely spearheaded a transformation of his industry, which is the hair care, salon, beauty industry, where he is a world-renowned expert. But he's done it in a way that has incorporated kindness into the culture. And in the process, I think it's had these ripple effects that are continuing to today. And so that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to ask Winn to be with us is he has and is continuing to make changes in an industry that are far-reaching, even global. And secondly, Winn has, as much as anyone I've met, he has blended his talents and his skills into a platform that is it's changing lives beyond his industry, as a speaker, as an author, as a philanthropist, and so forth. So we all start where we are. We have our lane, right? We're in a lane. It's what we're good at. It's what we know. And many of us stay in that lane, and that's all we do. Winn has and is expanding far beyond that and touching the lives of millions of people in the process. So Winn, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. But I'm looking forward to getting into your story. Maybe we can just start out by telling us where you grew up and a little bit about your family and what got you into this industry. Obviously, we'll get into the details of it, but just so you all know, as you're listening, Winn is the co-founder and the dean of the Paul Mitchell Schools. They have over 100 locations today, and he has built that school in partnership with the Paul Mitchell's company, in partnership with originally Paul Mitchell, but then John Paul DiGiorio, right?
Yes.
And has continued with his son, with Paul Mitchell's son, since his passing. But Your story is incredible, Winn. I mean, as I've been learning more and more about you, it just goes on and on and on. I had to condense everything just to get into your bio. I had to cut about 3/4 of it out just to make it fit. I only have so many, I only have so many words that I can fit into the bio as I did the write up. But tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started, and where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Southern California. But at some point around the age of 19 years old, I moved to Utah for a little while. My whole family moved to Utah. And so I moved up there as well, which is where I started my company. I got into the hair industry. I joke now I'm in the hair business, but I'm not a hairdresser. I've never been a hairdresser. So, never went to college, not one day of college. I barely, and I mean barely, graduated from high school. Apparently they want you to show up. I was busy, I told them. And now here, almost 40 years later, not a hairdresser, never went to college, but I make a lot of money. I get to travel the world. I get to have a lot of fun every single day, because the beauty industry, I heard it said that hairdressers go to work every single day with the intention of having fun. So I belong to an industry that's all about fun, which actually has really helped me and guide me as I consult and work with other industries about teaching them how to create that fun culture, something that people want to belong to. And that's a whole nother topic. But the beauty industry taught me that. I've had the opportunity in the last 10 years, been invited to speak at Yale University, UCLA, Brigham Young, never went to college, but major universities are always inviting me to come and speak. Oh, and then, gosh, about 15 years ago, I was received the Lifetime Achievement Award, from the North American Hairdressing Association. And I'm not even a hairdresser, but not once, Patrick, not once in my entire 40-year career has anybody ever asked to see my resume. No, nobody has any idea if I'm even qualified to be doing any of this right now.
That's amazing. So going back 40 years or so now, since you started your company, I'm actually from Utah. I went to Brigham Young University. Don't know if you knew that, but
I did not know that. Wow.
So I'm sure there was a big transition from.
Wait, so you didn't go to get your hair done at my school there in Provo, Utah? I started it 40 years ago in Provo, Utah. It was my first school.
I actually think I have gotten my hair cut there, because I lived in Orem, Provo. And they gave, since they were students that were practicing, we got a pretty good deal, as I remember right.
Back then, it was probably $5 for a haircut.
Yeah.
What's so funny is Steve Young, the famous football player, told me that while he was going to Brigham Young University, that my school was his dating pool. He would go and get his haircut every 3 weeks because my school was filled with so many beautiful women that's where he got most of his dates from. So maybe I shouldn't be sharing that, but I love that story.
That's great. So my dad actually went through the same transition. He grew up in Long Beach, where I know you lived in Long Beach for several years, and he moved to Utah. His family moved when he was later, really in high school. But he said he missed the beach. He went to the mountains, but it was a big transition. I'm curious to know how old you were when you moved, and what was that transition like for you from Southern California to the Wasatch Front?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, I love the state of Utah. The only thing that I am now trying to avoid as I get older in life is cold weather. So, the older I get, the warmer I want it. So to be in Southern California certainly lends itself to that. And maybe the next move is to Mexico. I don't know, someplace warmer.
Right. I can relate. I spent about 12 years in Portland, Oregon, and then 3 years in San Diego. Now we live in Henderson, as you know. And same reason. I mean, it breaks my mom's heart. I'm sure she'd love us to live in Salt Lake City, but we don't miss the cold.
So your family is still all there in Utah?
They are.
Yeah, my 96-year-old mother lives there in Lehi, Utah. So I get up there. I was just up there for her birthday a couple of weeks ago, and took her up to Sundance. I've never seen that much snow up at Sundance, and there I'm pushing her in a wheelchair in the snow, and she's giggling the whole way. It was so I always have really, really good experiences and memories of being there in Utah.
That's great. So what attracted you to the beauty industry? I mean, you weren't a hairstylist, you weren't a barber, but how did you make that leap into that?
I had money from a project that I was in. All of a sudden I had this money that I wanted to invest in some type of a business. I had friends that were hairdressers, and 40 years ago, they talked me into opening up a little salon. I mean, the salon was 3 chairs about the size of my bedroom. Of course, back then I was the receptionist, I was the janitor, I was the shampoo boy, I was the towel boy. You do everything. Nowadays they don't even give me a key to my building. So, but back then you do it all. And by the way, I was having a blast. I loved every aspect of it. Had zero education to be doing what I was doing, but I've always been a fan of mentors. My mom even says that when I was a little kid, how she got me to eat breakfast in the morning was to tell me that that's what Walt Disney ate for breakfast. And because I always admired successful people, especially successful people, famous people that do good things with their celebrity, with their money, I'm always attracted to that, even to this day. And so even though I didn't have the college education or the business experience, I was always on the hunt for wonderful mentors. And I've humbled myself. Again, to this day, I humble myself enough to learn from people who are much smarter than I am.
Well, that's not hard to do. In my case, I am surrounded by some extraordinary business leaders, mentors, and just partners in our company, Certainty Management. I started it as a sole proprietor and eventually opened up the ownership to some of our affiliates because I wanted them to have a vested interest in it. For me, it wasn't about the money or the control as much as I wanted partners who were vested, who had some skin in the game, as it were, right?
That sense of ownership. I love telling people, gosh, if you're the smartest, most talented person working for your company, I feel sorry for you. Because that means that you're now going to be forced to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. A smart person, a great leader knows how to bring out the best in other people. It's all about that collaboration.
I completely agree. Absolutely. So you started your business, and then how did it evolve from there? Because eventually you became a spokesperson for Paul Mitchell. You started speaking all over the country. I'm interested how that transition happened, because that was pretty significant for your life.
It was. And I think it's Tony Robbins who says that you're motivated through either inspiration or desperation. And for me, way back then, it was desperation on a personal level. I was struggling. I was struggling with happiness. I was struggling with depression. And you better believe that was going to impact my business. And so I started following incredible mentors, both from a spiritual point of view to a personal development point of view, even a clinical point of view, by authors such as John Bradshaw and Louise Hay and Marianne Williamson and Og Mandino and Gerald Jampolsky. I mean, that list just goes on and on. And I just started studying these people, but I was taking in so much information from the books that I was reading and the seminars that I was going to with these mentors that the only way that I could validate the information was to talk about it. And so in my team huddles for my business, my team would ask me, gosh, when you just got back from that 2-day retreat with Louise Hay, what did you learn? And so I'd spend 2 hours talking about what she taught me and what I learned in that process of sharing information that really had nothing to do with the business, so to speak, but it had everything to do with empowering people. By me sharing that information, I saw that things were increasing in my company, in my business, better loyalty, better teamwork, better creativity, better profitability, because we were focused on that aspect of life as well, not just the business of running a business. And that process of sharing information eventually one day turned into a career. I had no idea that somebody was going to pay me to hear what I have to say, hear what I have to share. And so I'm grateful for that part of my career as well. I think we all have about 5 jobs, right, Patrick? You have about 5 jobs,
we do.
Maybe 10, who knows?
Some of us have 20 or 25, but that's
there you go.
Story.
There you go. I'm Uber dad, but I run this company, and I have another company that I'm with called Salty Dog, and I'm a motivational speaker. So yeah, we all have 5 jobs.
Yeah. So as you started speaking, and it's funny because you talked about earlier about how people have these major fears, right? public speaking is the number one fear for most people, even greater than death. I mean, I think it was Jay Leno that said most of us would rather be giving or in the casket than giving the eulogy, right?
Right.
And yet for some of us, we feed off it. And it's interesting because I'm the same way. I love speaking. I'd rather be on a stage speaking or doing an interview like this than just about anything else. But it is a really big fear for a lot of people. So as you started giving these your team speeches and did it just start to did word spread? Or I mean, how did it get back to Paul Mitchell corporate that you were that guy?
Well, first of all, that whole idea of becoming a speaker, and you say that lots of people have a fear of that. My response to that is build a bridge and get over it. Right. I think that every successful business leader, manager needs to become a motivational speaker, because sometimes your audience is one person, is one-on-one with that team member that needs some coaching or some encouragement or some praise. Or sometimes it's on a stage in front of 10 team members in a team huddle, in a team training or meeting. And for those of us who've decided to turn it into a career, sometimes it's on stage in front of 3,000 people. But for everybody to develop the skill set of being an effective speaker, where you know how to move people with your words, you better believe that that's a skill set that's going to serve you well. So as I was out there, to answer your question, as I was out there sharing my ideas and my stories and my experience from stages, the word spread, and all of a sudden I got contacted by the Paul Mitchell Company. It was soon after the man Paul Mitchell had died in 1989. So it was soon after that they asked me to do some seminars for them. And that gig back in 1989 just kept on growing and growing and growing until it was hundreds of events every single year. When it was time that the Paul Mitchell Company wanted to get into the school business. So now I'm going back about 22 years ago, John Paul DeJoria. So he's that guy that you see in the TV commercials with the ponytail, and he recently sold Patron tequila. So he approached me about 22 years ago and said, I want to get into the school business. Would you be my partner? And so that's how that started off. So even though by that point I had already been in the school business almost 20 years, when he and I got together, the plan was that we were going to open up 7 schools together, and now we have over 100.
Incredible. Well, I know you wrote a book called Be Nice or Else. I'd like to talk a little bit about that after our break, but Larry King, I know, said you're one of the finest public speakers in the country. He even wrote the foreword to your book. So I think you know what you're talking about, Winn.
Thanks, Patrick.
It's an incredible story. I love the fact you started in Utah because that's my hometown, but it's just incredible. My hat is off to you. Congratulations on your success. And it's time for us to go to break real quick. But when we come back, let's jump ahead and talk a little bit about what the school has accomplished, and especially what you're doing with your fundraising, your annual fundraising program, and some of the other things you're doing. So we're speaking with Winn Claybaugh. He's the co-founder and dean of the Paul Mitchell Schools, and public speaker, author, philanthropist. Very pleased to have you with us, Winn.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, we're clear.
Thanks, Aaron. That's really fascinating. So was it a bit of a culture shock moving to Utah, or was it, did you find it easy?
Sorry, it's a little cold in my office here. It was, it really was. And I just love Southern California. So it was time to get out of there and get back down here. Plus that was when I went into partnership with John Paul. Mm-hmm. It was time to leave and really get this going in Southern California, to make this our home base. And so our school in Costa Mesa has been considered our flagship school. That's our shining object right there that people emulate. And now we're almost in pretty much every state. in the country.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You plan to grow from there? Is it continuing
You
to
know what?
expand?
It's our 100 locations is all organic. We've never had a broker trying to sell franchises for us or ever been to a franchise convention. So it's all, word of mouth, very organic. And
30 seconds.
Thanks, sir.
mostly I'm excited about building the salty dog side of it. The school side's doing just great.
We'll have to talk a little bit about that. That's a whole nother industry, but it is massive. I know we love our pets.
Oh yeah.
10 seconds.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Lang. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Enjoying the conversation with Winn Claybaugh. He's the co-founder and dean of Paul Mitchell, the school, and motivational speaker, author, philanthropist, and you're a dad, right? You have a daughter. How old's your daughter these days?
I have oh my gosh. My God, you even say you have a daughter and I get emotional. Yeah, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's just the best thing that ever happened to me. I like to tell people, had I not become a dad, I would have turned into a rich old jerk. So,
And it's Kennedy. Is that her name?
no, Sophia.
Sophia. Okay. I have 3 boys, 2 girls,
Okay.
and I became a dad almost overnight. My kid's mom was a widow with 3 children, so they were 4, 3, and 1 when we
Wow.
met. We have 2 boys together, so I went from 0 to 4 children in a year. When
Jeez.
I should be the one who has the same hairdo as you, but it's hanging in there. But it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And anyone who hasn't experienced parenthood, I know there's a lot of people who don't want to be parents and they think they can't handle it. But when you see those children, especially when from the very first moment, you never realized how much you could love another person. Isn't it true?
Yeah, it really absolutely puts things into perspective. And if the topic were, hey, Winn, what have you learned from your daughter? I could just go on and on and on, especially about the part of being present and how much, this little device here can steal that from being a really good dad. And my God, again, I could go on and on about leadership qualities of how being on your cell phone all the time is not only bad parenting, it's also bad leadership.
Right.
So, but I learned that from being a dad.
I completely agree. You, as we look back over your career, you've really helped change this entire generation of beauty professionals. And you talk about the lessons you've learned from your daughter and from your partner. You've learned it from mentors, right? You had this extraordinary opportunity to partner with Jean Paul DeJorio. And that's an opportunity of a lifetime. The guy's an icon, right?
Oh yeah,
And
he is. And still to this day, he's still very, very active. We're in touch all the time. And every time I get on the phone, he has 100 new exciting projects or causes that he's involved in. And he just loves life. He genuinely loves people. And if you're in a room with Jean Paul DeJoria, he's not talking about his billions of dollars. He's not talking about his brand new car. He's not talking about, his latest accolade or award. He's talking about you, and he's genuinely interested in you. And he'll ask you questions about you. And how he ends every single meeting is, gosh, is there anything more that I can do for you? That's literally how he ends every phone call, every meeting. What can I do for you? He really has what we call a servant's heart when it comes to leadership.
Well, you see, anyone who is truly successful, they seem to have figured that out, haven't they? I mean, I know you have.
Well, you hope so. Unfortunately, you see some that somehow they're still able to be successful and make the money, even though the culture that they have created is a culture of fear and intimidation and ego, and yet they're still making money. Like, okay, well, for me, it's a lot more than making money. It's about my legacy, and it's about being able to sleep at night. It's about being a good dad and a good human being and a good example. So that culture, which you brought up in the very, very beginning of our interview, just the importance of a culture. I think it's John Maxwell that says, culture eats everything for lunch. Culture eats systems for lunch. So it's all about having that wonderful culture, which has to start from the top.
Well, it does. And I think, when I say those who are truly successful, that's more than just finances, right? It's more than just wealth. It's all those things you talk about as far as impact and legacy, and how did you change your community and change the world? I love the Paul Mitchell story because they started with just, I think it was $700. They launched this hair care system and with 3 products. Now they're in 80 countries, 150 plus products. And but I think even the fact that he wanted to create an education system says something about who he was, right? He wasn't just about selling product. It was about creating opportunity for all of his beauty professionals, right? And I mean, what was it like when he reached out to you and said, I'd like to be your partner, let's co-found this? Said you were already in this school, you were already teaching professionals how to do the business, it sounds like, had been doing so for many years. But to make that transition and to launch Paul Mitchell, the school, where was the first location? I think you said it was in California, right?
Well, my first location was right there in your hometown of Provo, Utah. So again, that's where I opened up my first cosmetology school 40 years ago. And by the way, it's still there.
Is that right?
So it's still there, going strong. But the first school that John Paul and I opened up together was in Costa Mesa, California. So that was 22 years ago.
And that's still considered the flagship location, isn't it?
It is. It is. And again, the whole company it's been growing organically. We didn't seek out partners or sell franchises, through a broker. That's not what we did. It was all about relationships. It was all about, gosh, we have a great relationship with this incredible business owner, a salon owner, or an entrepreneur in this city. It's not like we chose that city because we did the research and the demographics and had a great broker who is good at real estate, or the city was giving us some tax breaks. That's not what it was about. It was all about a relationship. So all of our successful business endeavors started because there was a successful relationship in place.
I love that. I know a big part of it has been the culture at Paul Mitchell school and at the Paul Mitchell schools. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind. Tell us what makes up the culture that you think sets you apart from other programs out there, because you have this world-renowned reputation now. Your professionals, your students are they are passionate about what they're doing, and they're actually giving back in their own ways, which we're going to get into here in a minute. But how do you define the culture there at the Paul Mitchell schools?
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick. It's a great question. It's a great question because it's something that I'm very proud of, something that I focus on every single day. Like, this is what I consider to be my number one job. It's not making sure that we have the right janitor or that we have the right accounting systems. Again, I'm surrounded by people who are much smarter than I am. I feel like my number one priority, my number one role as the co-founder, as the dean of Paul Mitchell Schools, is to be that ambassador of a culture. And culture is that feeling that you have when you walk into any type of a business. You can walk into a restaurant and it could be beautiful decor and incredible reputation, but you walk in, it's like, gosh, it just doesn't feel good here.
Right.
And the opposite can be true as well. You walk in, it's like, gosh, this is where I belong. This is where it feels good. And I believe that when two people come together, there's a culture, and we have to decide what that culture looks like, what that culture feels like, or by default, it will be decided for us. And so we made the decision many years ago of what that culture would stand for. And it's real simple if I can share it with you.
Sure. We'd love to
There
hear
are
it.
3 basic human needs that we focus on. Number 1, people need to feel safe. When people do not feel safe, we don't bring out the best in them. I give this little story, this little joke. So a business owner is given a tour of his business, of his facility. And the person asks, so how many people work here? And the business owner responded with, oh, about half work here. And the reason why that can't happen is because people aren't engaged. I mean, maybe they're engaged with their time, meaning they show up to work for one thing and one thing only, and that is to receive a paycheck. But they're not engaged with their heart, with their creativity, with their passion. And oftentimes when people aren't engaged, what do we want to do? We just want to fire them. But you cannot fire your way into building a better team of people. So
Right.
we know if people do not feel safe, they're not engaged. And if they're not engaged, we don't get the best from them. So number 1, people need to feel safe. Number 2, people need to feel that they belong. 60% of people say no one has my back. And by the way, half of them are married. So maybe they don't feel like they belong at home. Maybe they don't feel like they belong in their neighborhoods, but I want to create a culture within my company that people, maybe for the first time ever, they feel like they belong. We're all different here, different size, different colors, different ages, different political and religious backgrounds and affiliations. But when we come together, we all belong here. This is where we belong. And then the 3rd basic human need is people need to feel that they have a purpose. So it's not just about cutting hair. It's not just about making pizzas. It's not just about cleaning teeth. What's the bigger purpose, the bigger reason why we come together? And the best way I can explain this or share this is you have 2 janitors working for an elementary school. They have the same job, the same title, the same salary, the same hours, the same boss, the same everything. One janitor has the attitude of, these little brats make a mess around here, and it's my job to clean it up. That's what they pay me to do. And the other janitor has the attitude of, my role is to create a clean, educational, learning environment for the next generation that's going to save this planet. So one has a job, the other one has a purpose. People need to have a purpose.
I love that. I completely agree. I've tried to incorporate those same principles into our company, and our consulting firm is named Certainty Management. And we educate our clients on these exact things, on how to add to recruiting and retention, how to make it a place that their people want to work at, they're excited to work at, creating ownership in your employees. And how do you do that? You do it by helping them feel safe, helping them feel like they belong, and helping them feel like they have purpose. I think they also have to have fun, right? Which I know is a big part of your culture. I mean, I've heard some of your talks and some of your addresses, and you've spoken to companies ranging from Southwest Airlines to everyone in between, and about these principles, because it's not just because they're universal, right? They cross global barriers. They're international. They work with a small business with 3 employees all the way up to a major corporation with thousands of employees, because they are, I call them eternal principles, right? And as we talk about adding in the fun side of it, obviously a big part of your culture, and I think it's one of the reasons your professionals feel so much engagement, is what you're doing to give back. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's get into what you're doing with the fundraising event each year. Do you mind explaining what it is and how it works? Because I know you've given away so far over, what is it? What are you up to? About $25 million now that you've given to charities?
Yeah, for a variety of causes. So we've raised a ton of money, almost $2 million for Children's Miracle Network hospitals, which I'm sure, Patrick, you being there from Utah, I'm sure you're also good friends with Murray Osmond, the co-founder of Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, which serves 170 hospitals throughout the country. 10 million children a year walk into a Children's Miracle Network hospital. And so that's one of our the charities that we raise money for. We've also been working with the Gary Sinise Foundation for over,
Right.
12 years, building smart homes for triple and quadruple amputees, true war heroes, and working with first responders. We've raised a ton of money for Thirst Project, building clean water wells around the planet, Food for Africa. We every single day are feeding over 10,000 orphans. Not only are we feeding them, we're clothing them and educating them. We've been doing that for many, many years. Best
Wow.
Friends Animal Sanctuary. So a variety of different causes in the fight of sex trafficking. So there's a lot of causes that we're very, very passionate about. And, fortunately, I was raised well. I'm one of 8 children, and my parents taught us that we're going to give back, that we're going to make a difference. Dad, why do I have to go mow the lawn of the old lady down the street if she's not going to pay me? I was raised well. So when I started my company, of course, I had a mattress on the floor in my apartment, but we were still hosting some type of a fundraising event to make a difference in our local communities. And I think you and I are having this conversation yesterday that the for-profit industries could learn a lot from the nonprofit world and vice versa.
Right.
And sometimes when we're busy building our companies and our businesses, and you don't have to be a business owner to relate to or to understand what I'm talking about. But when we're building our careers, sometimes we just put our head down and we work super, super hard. For 10, 15 years, we raise our hand. It's like, wow, I'm paying my bills. I drive a really cool car, but I haven't done anything to give back. And I understand that. And so then they start thinking along those lines. But fortunately, I was taught that I needed to have that element in my company, in my career from the very, very beginning. And so in our fundraising campaign that we do through our Paul Mitchell schools and through my new company, Salty Dog, it's not just one Saturday a year that we have a walk-a-thon to raise money. In our Paul Mitchell schools, it literally, Patrick, is a 3-month campaign where almost every single day in all 100 plus of our schools, there is some type of a fundraising campaign happening, whether it's a bake sale that'll raise $50 that day, or a car wash that'll raise $500 that day, or a fashion show or a cut-a-thon that's going to raise $1,000 that day. But it's literally the average donation that we receive is around $5 to $10, very grassroots. And yet today it's as you mentioned, it has brought in over $25 million. And when I say that we've raised $25 million, we have donated $25 million, meaning we have zero overhead. We don't pay rent for the nonprofit arm of our company. Everybody's a volunteer. I have one very, very part-time employee that helps us with the bookkeeping for that company. But otherwise, the lawyers, the marketers, the accountants, everybody that's affiliated with our fundraising campaign, everybody volunteers their time.
Wow, it's an incredible story, Winn. I think whether we fall into it, we learned it as a child growing up, or we figure it out eventually, some never do. And I really believe they're missing out on one of the sweetest parts of life. As we were talking yesterday, and we're up against our next break, but if for-profits don't understand that, I believe they're shortchanging themselves. They're missing out on one of the most important parts of their business. It's not necessarily not just an obligation that they have, but it's a real blessing if they figure it out. I want to come back after the break. Let's continue the conversation, but we are out of time. Go ahead. One last comment.
Even if a company doesn't want to do it for the right reason, because it's the right thing to do, there are statistics that prove a company that does get involved with contributing back to their community, whether that's locally or globally, what that does in terms of employee retention, attracting the best type of employee, where you're going to get the best skill set, the best creativity, the best knowledge, as well as customer loyalty. Really quick, 85% of consumers will decide to do business with a company based on whether or not that company, that business, is involved with giving money back out to their community.
It's true.
Even if it's for selfish reasons that you want more customers, it's the right thing to do.
Right. Even if all you want is the tax write-off,
There you
Start
go.
there, and you'll see the other ripple effects, the ramifications that come of it. So we're visiting with Winn Claybaugh. He's the co-founder and dean of the Paul Mitchell Schools. Very pleased to have you here, Winn. I'm loving this conversation. We're going to go to break
Thank you.
real
Me
quick.
too.
We'll be right back.
All right, we're all clear.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I could talk all day about this topic. This is a
Yeah, me too. Me too. I really could.
the rest of it is almost peripheral, isn't it? It's like the means to the end, but the end is to be able to give back.
You know, and by the way, I could continue talking about that. Like, you know, the charities that we choose to work with, you know, we really do our research. You know, it's heartbreaking to raise money for a charity when you find out that more than 25% of their revenue is spent in overhead. That's heartbreaking to me.
I agree.
And I get it that, you know, there are business expenses to running a nonprofit, but you want to know that if I'm donating money, whether that's $100 of my hard-earned paycheck or, you know, thousands of dollars on behalf of my company, you want to know that it's going to where it's supposed to go. So we do our research when it comes to that as well.
I can tell the quality of the organizations that you are supporting speaks volumes. I mean, just Children's Miracle Network alone, let alone Thirst and Cast and all these. They're fantastic organizations. We're big fans of and big supporters of the anti-sex trafficking work that like Operation Underground Railroad is doing and others.
Oh, Tim Ballard is a genius. He's an incredible guy.
He is. Trying to get him on my show. It's hard to nail
10
him
seconds.
down. He's always running and overseas somewhere. So, okay, we're back.
All right, guys, here we go.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Lang. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty, everyone. We're visiting with Winn Claybaugh. He's the dean and co-founder of the Paul Mitchell Schools. And really just an incredible career, Winn. As a motivational speaker, author. Let's talk just for a minute about your book. Be nice or be kind. No, excuse me. Be nice or else, right? That's the name of the title.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Reeves. Does that name ring a bell?
It does not.
Gary is a music producer. He's a television producer. He was a guest on my show a few months back, and the title of that show was How Kindness and Love Work in Business. How important it is in business. That's the topic of your book, right? And it's been, I know it's been integrated into the culture of your company, of this school. You have over 1,000 students, is my understanding, over 100 locations. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the book. What's it about, and what's the core message?
Thank you. You know, originally the book was an employee manual. Again, back in the very, very beginning, it was all about the culture. We need to write this down. It was easy to create a culture that stays strong if we're all in the same building every single day. But when you have multiple locations with team members that you've never even met, how do you know that culture is alive and strong? That culture that we talked about before, where people feel safe, where they feel like they belong, where they feel like they have a purpose. How's that going to happen in a building, in a facility where I'm not visiting there every single day? So it was important to write it down, because I believe that if things are not written down, then it doesn't exist. There's not a system unless it's written down. And so it started off as an employee manual. As I started sharing what I was writing with certain friends and mentors, they had encouraged me to turn it into a book. And then I got people like the president of Southwest Airlines, Colleen Barrett, endorsed it. And Larry King came along and said, I hear you're writing this book. I would like to write the foreword for your book. Even people like Betty White came on board and said, this is a cause that a message that I'm really passionate about. You need to make this into a book. And so I got a lot of encouragement from people. And the first part of the book is to dispel those myths about what it means and what it does not mean to be nice. Some people think if I'm nice, people will walk all over me. And I'm here to say, no, you can fire somebody and still be nice about it. You can break up with somebody and still be nice about it. You can express your opinion and your vote and your messaging and still be nice about it. Being nice does not mean that you have to talk in a really soft voice and wear pastel colors all the time. And so I really want to dispel that yeah, you can be successful in life. You can, nice guys do finish first. So that was the first part of the book. The next part of the book gets into being nice to ourselves. You can't be nice out there if you're not first being nice in here. And so we talk a lot about that. There are a couple of chapters devoted to the business world of what that looks like. And then the last part of the book is what I call a be nice revolution. Especially nowadays, my gosh, this planet is just so divided and it's us versus them. And if I disagree with you, not only am I going to debate you on it, I'm going to unfriend you, I'm going to blackball you, I'm going to do everything that I can to destroy you. Why? Because I disagree with your opinion. So now even more than ever, to add niceness to any equation is absolutely going to serve us well.
Well, it absolutely does. And it's a necessity. Again, it's, as we were talking about, for-profit organizations that haven't figured out the value of that philanthropic side. I think it's professionals, leaders, business executives, et cetera, who haven't figured out the value of this principle. You don't have to be a jerk to be strong, right? You can have boundaries. You can stand up for yourself. You can be a compelling leader and still be nice. I think I
can guarantee you when people quit, that's what they're saying. They're quitting. Why'd you quit? That was such a good job, a great paycheck. And what are they saying to you? My boss was mean. My boss was a jerk. 50% of people who quit their jobs did so to get away from their boss. And by the way, those who are quitting, it's not the worst employees, it's the best employees. And the best employees are quitting. Why? They know they deserve better.
I couldn't agree with you more, Winn. But I think there's this misnomer, just like you said, that if you're nice, you're weak. And so it's so gratifying seeing leaders like yourself. Gary's a good example, Gary Reeves. I should introduce you to, because he's the producer of it's a series on the Oprah Winfrey Network called Give. And they highlight a number of different nonprofits each year. I think what you guys do, you would really resonate with each other.
That sounds awesome. Wow.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. So you've also done some work with the Andrew Gomez Dream Foundation, which I know you co-founded. And when you talk about being nice, and why people leave their employer, a lot of the time it's because they're suffering, right? They're struggling, and we're not aware, because you spoke earlier about being present with your daughter, present as a parent. I think we also need to be present as employers, as coworkers. We need to look up from our phones and be engaged, not just in our job and in our work, but in our community, in our lives. We don't have to agree on everything, right? We can be nice about our disagreements, about our differences of opinion and so forth. But I also think we need to be aware and alert and engaged in each other's lives. Share with me your thoughts on that. Do you agree with me?
I absolutely do. I recently read that the Center of Disease Control is saying that 50% of people now are suffering from some sort of mental health challenge. And then there's that side of me that says, really? So the other 50% are just fine? I don't think so. Right. So it's, you better believe it's prominent in our families, in our circle of friends. It's also prominent at work. And again, you don't have to be the boss to be someone who has influence and can make a difference with the people that you work with every single day. Leadership is not a title. It's not a position. It's an attitude. It's a mindset. It's an energy. You could be the brand new person working in that company, making less money than anybody else, but your influence on the people that you work with every single day can be absolutely profound. And so mental health and mental illness and mental well-being is at the top of everybody's list right now. And if it's not, it should be, and it could be. Andrew Gomez was one of my graduates and an employee who unfortunately ended his life with suicide. And when that happened over 20 years ago, that was a huge wake-up call because none of us had any idea. We had no clues. And so now for us to, first of all, be aware, but second of all, make it a topic of conversation. There's just so much, still such a stigma attached to that. There's no shame in having cancer. There's no shame in being a diabetic, right? But there's this shame in struggling with some sort of mental illness or affliction, whether that's addiction, depression, suicidal thoughts. So for us to be transparent and have those conversations, you and I were talking about my past experience as a drug addict and alcoholic. I'm
Right.
now 21 years clean and sober, and I am very, very transparent about that because I think leaders need to be transparent. Because if we hide that side of ourselves, I know that people look at me and they're like, gosh, Winn, okay, you look like you're doing okay, and yet you overcame that. Maybe there's hope for me. Patrick, I love this whole theme of finding certainty, because to me, what that means is hope. It's our job to sell hope. And
Right.
people, an employee, a team member, a friend could be down and out in every way, down and out spiritually, emotionally. But if there's a small glimmer of hope, a little bit of glimmer of certainty, then okay, we can work with that. And I think it's our job to bring that to not only to our families, but also to the workplace.
I totally agree. With our business, one of the things we do is we provide really low cost benefits to business owners, small businesses, and our mental health program, it's $30 a month. It's unlimited counseling sessions with zero copay, and it is our #1 seller.
Oh, I'm sure.
It is an absolute need out there. Speaking of hope, you talked about Betty White. She gave you a hard time about your haircut, heading up this global hair and beauty conglomerate. But she was a great example of inspiring and instilling hope in people. I think I'm sure it was quite the honor to have
and kindness and fun and humor, like all those qualities that we all emulate. All those skill sets that you better believe are going to make us more money, more successful. Yeah, she was a great example of a lot of those skills.
Well, and it's about more than just money, right? When you figure that out, you gain this richness and this depth in your life. That's what we're talking about with companies. If they would understand the depth and the ripple effects that would have in employee retention and so forth and so on, I think it would take our economy to a whole nother level, let alone the soul of our country, if I may say so. So
I agree.
We are coming up on the end. I know you've transitioned and in addition to the beauty industry, you're now working in the pet industry. Tell us real quick in 30 seconds about Salty Dog.
Well, the pet industry is a $100 billion industry. It's growing and expanding. Look at how many people, especially during the pandemic, decided to get pets, bring animals into their world. And you know this, Patrick, sometimes we spend more on our pets than we do on ourselves. I know people who are spending, upwards of $100 to groom their animals, and yet they're not spending anything on their own personal grooming services. And so we love our animals, and so do I, and so do my partners in this. And so we have a couple of locations already open. The goal is to have about 100 locations in the next 3 years. And it's just a fun industry. It's just a fun industry. And the thing that sets us apart is that we look to hire licensed hairdressers who already know how to cut hair. So they have that skill set, and we transition that skill set into pet grooming. But there are also people who love customer service. This is an industry that loves animals, and that's who we're attracting into our salty dog pet grooming salons.
That's fantastic. You know, one of my favorite quotes, I actually saw it on your Instagram, and I knew we had a lot in common. It says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? From Dr. Martin Luther King. You're a great example of that, Winn. Thanks for sharing with us a little bit of your story. How do people get a hold of you? Just real quick, what's your website?
My website's just my name, winnclaybaugh.com. That's also my Instagram and my Facebook and Twitter and everything else. So just real simple. On my website, I have a podcast that I've had for over 22 years. Every single month for the last 22 years, I put out a new interview, and I've interviewed people like Larry King and Gary Sinise and Marie Osmond, but also people who nobody would know who they are, but they have a story to tell. And I love storytellers. To me, the best leaders are storytellers.
Well, I completely agree. And you're one of the best. Thank you so much.
Patrick. Well, you're very good at what you do. Your questions and how easily you facilitate this conversation. And that's what it felt like, is just the two of you, I out for coffee. And it's feels like a really good conversation. And I appreciate that.
It's been great. Thanks for listening, everybody. And thank you, Winn. Come on back next week. Well, we're grateful to have you here on Finding Certainty.
All right. Great show. We're all clear, Patrick.
Thanks, Aaron.
You got it. Have a great week.
So I always say on the YouTube video, when people get the behind the scenes, they get the commentary during the breaks and everything. Was there anything else that we should have mentioned? Anything you'd like to add to what we shared?
Wait, you're saying that on the YouTube video, they're going to see me blowing my nose? Is that what you're saying?
They're going to see it all.
Oh, now you tell me. Oh my gosh. No, I don't think so. I think, we kind of covered it all. Obviously you probably suspect that I can ramble and go on and on, especially with, things that I'm passionate about. So my daughter, philanthropy, those are things that I could spend all day, every day talking about.
Right. So Sophia, I lived in Italy a couple of years, and later went back as an interpreter with the Army. And I love that name,
wow.
Sophia.
Yeah.
I think I've seen your Instagram, some of your pictures of you and David. Is it David, your husband?
George.
Yeah. So it's funny. I put your info into ChatGPT. Have you heard of ChatGPT?
I haven't.
It's a new AI app that is, it's turning a lot of heads. It came out in November of this year, and it's extraordinary. You can have it write, you can have it code for you. It does research, etc. But it's not perfect yet because it's AI and it's learning. And so I apologize for getting the names wrong, but that's what it told me when I asked a little bit about you. And so I had a lot of it right. I mean, about 90%, but there's probably 10% that it's still learning. And the thing about it with the AI, with the app, is that it's continuing to get better. I can't even imagine where it will be in 3 to 6 months, but I encourage you to check it out. It's you go to openai.com and look for ChatGPT. I shared it with my team this last week because what it's doing is pretty extraordinary. It came out in November of 2022. It's already valued at $30 billion.
Wow. Can't it like duplicate your voice and say things? Then
it can. I mean, you can have it write in your voice. You can say, incorporate some elements from the New Testament and the art of war, and it'll write with those elements built into it.
And speak it with your voice.
I don't know about that yet, but I've heard where it's headed is just, it's a little scary, but I think it's mostly inspiring. So it's really interesting. You're hiring hair salonists to be your dog groomers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even thought of that, but it's
the funny side to this is that we have students who are attending our schools who love cutting hair. They love that art, but they don't like people, or they're just too shy, and they love animals. You know, your
Right.
dog, your customer, the dog isn't talking back to you. So,
Right.
so when we launched this a couple of years ago, and we opened up our first location just to see what would happen. We had 10 openings, and we put out a little Facebook posting that, hey, we have 10 openings.
Mhm.
We had like over 200 of our graduates apply for it.
Really?
Yeah. So we're like, okay, I guess we're on to something. And then when we started doing the research of what pet groomers can earn, and it's one of those industries that's still very, very ma and pa type.
Mhm.
Like it's rare that there's that good transparent consistency with grooming salons. Usually the grooming salon, they take your dog, they take them into the back where you don't see them for a couple of hours. I don't know about you, but our dog would come out all skittish, and I'm like, what happened back there?
Right.
And in our locations, it's all glass, so you can see your pet go through the entire process of being bathed and then cut and then groomed, and you see them the entire time.
Nice.
So we like that transparency, and the caliber. I'm not sure how to say this, but the caliber of who we're attracting is different than the ma and pa type. For lack of a better way to explain this, sometimes the type of person who is attracted to pet grooming could be that ex-con.
Mm.
And so sometimes they're a little rough. Again, they love animals, but they hate people, and so they're difficult to manage. And you know,
Right.
they show up late, and you tell them that, and you know they're gonna quit, and they're gonna threaten you, and all kinds of things. And so we've just kind of changed that whole paradigm when it comes to who is the typical pet groomer.
That's really neat. It seems like a natural outgrowth of what you've done your whole career. And it's just the next chapter, right?
Well, that's why it's fun, because I'm not having to shift gears. It's we're extending the same culture, the same. We've already implemented our plan for how every single customer contributes to our annual fund for giving back and donating, and the charities that we've identified. You know, that was my relationship with Betty White. Was we donated over $1 million to Morris Animal Foundation, which she had been involved with for 50 years. I mean,
Incredible.
dog cancers, cat cancers, all kinds of different remedies for animal related diseases. The cures have been discovered by Morris Animal Foundation. And so we were a big supporter of that. And then you're obviously familiar with Best Friends Animal Sanctuary down there in southern Utah.
Sure.
Yeah, and the thing that we love about them, everybody thinks it's just local to Utah, and it's not. You know, they train communities all over the world on how to create no-kill zones. You know, up until the pandemic, Los Angeles was a kill zone. Best Friends Animal Sanctuary taught Los Angeles how to become a no-kill zone.
Is that
So
right?
it's pretty cool.
Wow, that is cool. Now, are your 100+ locations, are those corporate locations, or are they independent franchisees?
It's half and half. Some are corporately owned. And basically what that means is that John Paul and I have some type of ownership in them. Sometimes our ownership is 10%, sometimes it's 50%. The only location that is owned solely by me and John Paul is the Costa Mesa one.
Mm.
All the other ones, you know, 50% of those, we have a percentage of ownership. And then the other 50% are solely owned outright by our franchisees. But the whole
Understood.
goal, as you know, is that nobody would have any idea what's a corporate location and what's a franchise location. There's
Right.
no difference.
They're all consistent.
Yeah.
Well, I've taken up enough of your time, I'm sure, Winn. I'd love to meet you in person. Maybe we can meet for lunch or something. If
I would
next
love
time
that. I would
get
love
over
that.
to
And
LA.
anything that I can do for you, please reach out to me. I'm gonna reach out to Simone and thank her for this introduction. But I appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure. Most
And
definitely.
then just send whatever you have to me and Nancy so that she can post, and she's the one that kind of handles all that, because remember, she's the smart one and the pretty one. I'm just the pretty one.
I understand. Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate your time. Everybody, thanks for listening. If you're on the YouTube, you get to see the face with the voice. And He is the good looking one. I'm just trying to keep up, but
Thank you.
we really appreciate you being on the show. This has been fantastic. And I look forward to
Pleasure.
getting to know you better.
My pleasure. Thank you.